Can I tell you, there is no reason, nothing you have ever done, nothing I have ever done that would cause God to love us. God chooses to love us. Which brings me to the second point that I want to share with you out of this passage today, that God says about grace that you and I need to get clear in our heads, and that is that grace rescues the powerless. Now, you and I are powerless in ways that we are uncomfortable with. We like to think of ourselves as being in control. We like to imagine that in life, well, I can manage that, I can control that, I can do this, I do that. And let me just give you a clear example of how I know that's true about all of you. Don't you all have 5-year plans or next year's plans? You don't know you're going to be here. We plan as if we have control over whether we're going to breathe one more second after this. So instead of allowing ourselves to realize how powerless we are and how much we need God's grace, we sort of segment grace off and say, well, I need grace for this, but the rest of the time I'm okay. I don't need God. In fact, the truth is we hate to be powerless. Anybody here love to be powerless? None of us. We think of God's grace in terms of our powerlessness, in terms of our sin. That makes so much sense to us. Oh, I came to the point where I realized I had done some bad things and I needed God's forgiveness. But grace is not just, as I said a minute ago, it's not just for the beginning of the journey. That's what the Galatians had gotten wrong. All of a sudden, they were saved by grace, and now they're trying to be good Christians on their own. They're trying to be good Christians by study. They're trying to be good Christians by how religious they are. They're trying to be good. They're trying to say, God, I can manipulate you into what I need by giving you the sacrifices or the offerings that you want. And Paul looked at them and said, how is it that you have strayed so far from where you began? You didn't begin with God based on performance. Why are you now trying to walk with God based on performance? I wonder if anybody in this room needs to hear what I'm saying right now. How often we get in our mindset that if we do good things, our Father loves us. If we do bad things, our Father doesn't love us. You see, that's what human nature is all about. But our God is a different kind of God. Can I tell you, there is no reason, nothing you have ever done, nothing I have ever done that would cause God to love us. God chooses to love us. He just says, I'm going to love these people. That means that I can't work my way out of his love, nor can I work my way into greater parts of his love. Boy, doesn't that feel powerless. I mean, the whole reason that I treat Michelle nice is because I want her to treat me nice back. If Michelle said, no matter what you can do, I'm going to treat you nice no matter what, wonder what I would act like then. Wow. It's a good thing Michelle's not Jesus. Then I might get really nasty. I would not, honey. You know that's not true. You know that's true. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Do you get this? It's a hard concept for us because we don't live in a culture of grace. We don't live in a world that is gracious. There are smatterings of grace. Every once in a while we get touched by it. But let me just tell you this. I want to just say again, grace, this is a weird way to say it. Grace is powerless until you're powerless. And none of us like to be powerless. Diana and Robin don't stand regularly in front of the congregation and give updates, although they're wonderful speakers, great leaders, amazing women. And so what do you do when you have that kind of thing, right? You try to get yourself ready. You want to prepare, and there's nothing wrong with preparing. I prepare every week. Tim prepares. But in the ultimate, you know what? We have to come to this conclusion that no matter how much preparation I've done, no matter how eloquent I could speak, it's meaningless unless God's grace is here. If his Spirit doesn't open your heart and my mouth in the right way, nothing is going to make any sense. It doesn't matter. What I want you to hear and what I think Paul was trying to help us to see is for grace to be unleashed in my life, I have to realize that I don't need grace just then, I need grace right now. You and I need grace for the conversation we're going to have with our coworkers tomorrow. You and I need grace for thinking and being able to sit with the Spirit of God so that we can feel His presence, experience His. By the way, can I tell you something else about grace right here? Grace must be experienced, not just understood. There's something about knowing you're loved, and there's something about experiencing that you're loved. One of the reasons, I'm going to say a lot of things that you may not agree with. One of the reasons I believe the church and our culture is so weak is because we've got a lot of head knowledge and not a lot of experience. And we are afraid of experience. In North Carolina, where I just spent time, and I've got cousins and relatives and families down there, mountains, all the hillbillies. I love the hillbillies. And there's one church. I have not gone yet to this church because I'm usually going to a church that for other reasons. But there's one church, maybe more, but there's one church that I know of in the county. And I was sharing with someone in our church. Let me just give you the perspective here. Olney is 13 square miles and it has about 33,000 people, 33,000 people. The county that I'm talking about in North Carolina is 144 square miles and has 27,000 people. It has one high school for the whole county. So when I go down and I'm visiting churches, and I'll ask sometimes, like, where do you go to church? And I'll say, hey, I see a billboard for a church, or I see a sign, and they'll say, oh, that church. And I was talking to somebody about it, and I'm going to go, but he said this. He said, I went there one time and it scared my children. Now, what do you think's going on in that church? Snakes? No. No. That's Kentucky, not North Carolina. Sorry. And if you're from Kentucky, I apologize, but that's over the line. Could be Tennessee as well, but not North Carolina. No, I'm sure there are some snakeheads. No, here's what's going on. They're charismatic. They're Pentecostal. There's something alive in that church that people are like, whoa, wait a minute. Because how many churches have we gone to? Now, this would be different in our culture, but in that culture, you go to, and almost every church down there is Baptist. And if you grew up in a Baptist church, and I'm not speaking against any denomination. We are all brothers and sisters together. But in the Baptist church, this is church. There's church Sunday morning, there's church Sunday evening, and there's church Wednesday night. And in fact, some of those churches, if you started and said, hey, we want to have a group that meet, a small group that meets at our home, the pastor would say, no. Because I don't know what you're going to do. You need to be under our roof where I am teaching, where the right approved teachers are. Do you know what I'm talking about? So now that's the culture, and you've got this other church, and I don't know, they could be crazy people, because some Pentecostals are crazy. Raise your hand. Some Pentecostals and charismatics are crazy. I get that. Hey, the light of God attracts all kinds of moths and bugs. I get that. I consider myself a charismatic. I'm at least asthmatic if I'm not all the way charismatic. But here's the thing. We're afraid of life in the Spirit. Why? Because it's out of control. It's not what I know. What if God did something amazing right now? I remember years ago, some of you have been here in church long enough. I'm just going to recall, I was standing up here preaching. You're not getting out of here on time. I was standing up here preaching, and a young man was sitting right there. Some of you are going to remember this. And he stood up while I was preaching. Well, I've had people walk out before. It didn't faze me a bit. So he makes his way to the middle aisle, and he starts very slowly walking forward. Anybody here remember that? Yeah, and he just starts walking forward, and I kept preaching, keeping my eye on him, and he starts coming up onto the platform. And he came up onto the platform, and so by that time I thought I should pause. And I said to him, can I help you? And he, basically what he says, his name was David, if I remember correctly, and what I remember him saying was he had recently lost his dad. And he was not doing well. And I remember just saying, okay, David, we're going to pray for you. And I asked the congregation to pray for David, and we prayed for David, and we tried to connect David into the family. Nobody else in his family were really interested in spiritual things, if I remember, and we were trying to keep David connected, but unfortunately that connection didn't last too long. I hope in some way David was blessed by that. But what I remember afterwards was hearing, no one said this to me directly, but I would hear people say things like this: I think Kevin arranged that. I don't know why they thought I would have arranged that, but that's what I mean. We're uncomfortable with moves of the Spirit. We're uncomfortable when God prompts us. What's the first thing? Robin talked about these little promptings, right? I hope all of you are getting those little promptings. What do? We say to ourselves, is that God or is that me? Is that indigestion? And we often will not act on the prompting because what are we looking for? Confirmation, because I don't want to take a risk. I don't like feeling out of control. Now, here's what I would say. From now on, if you get a prompting, and that prompting is to bless someone, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, would you act on it and see what God does? I mean, if you get a prompting to smack the person in front of you in the grocery line, please do not act on that. That's not a prompting of God. I get that. But if the prompting is, go talk to, I just want you to go talk to that person. And you might be thinking, that's crazy. This is the way the kingdom works. God is at work. And he's got a mission, right? His mission is that his glory would overshadow the whole earth. And God may be working on this person that you've never met. He ignited something in their heart that day. And God's mission has a church. And so he looks at his people and he goes, oh my gosh, Richard is right near the person I've been working with. And so the Spirit prompts Richard, just go talk to her. I need her to see my kingdom with flesh. She's got to see a picture of it because she doesn't know what's going on or why she's being stirred. But you, Richard, you could just walk over and she would get a picture of grace in and through you. And so Richard walks over and she starts crying and says, I can't believe you just said what you said, because God prompted it in Richard. It was supernatural. He didn't have any idea what was going on. And God met her in that moment. That's an example of grace unleashed. And it is an example of this, that we've got to remain surrendered and powerless. If you want to be in control, you're going to miss so much of the kingdom of God.